Thank you for tuning in to another week of Help Nobody Told Me. I'm Jasmine Shapiro, here with my co-host and partner, Shannon Johnson. We're both realtors at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services here in Chicago.
And today we have our guest, Rae Luskin. Rae is an award-winning artist and author, but what she really focuses on is she's a creative mindfulness mentor. She helps people turn pain into purpose through the power of art. So we're going to let Rae tell you a little bit more about herself and what she does.
Thank you. Yes. For the last 30 plus years, I've been using art as a healing tool. I had an art studio. I was an art teacher, and I had my own art studio, and I brought kids in, and I talked to them about process, not product, which is a very different, when you're teaching an arts class, it's always, well, you got to learn how to see and do this, but mine was all about an internal process. And so I've used the arts for healing for myself personally. I used it, and it's simple, scribbles and doodles. It's going back to the basics. And, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my backstory now.
Okay.
It's a little strange going back and forth head to head. I just have to tell you. I was sexually abused by my grandfather from age 7 to 13. And I was an artist, and it was in his art studio. So it was like a double whammy, because I wanted to be Ray Rembrandt and Rubens for my whole life. That was who I was. And, I was abused by him.
How old were you?
7 to 13. So it was one of those times in your life, and, we were told whatever happens here stays here in your family. No one ever talked about it. I told my parents, Grant's giving me chest rubs, and they just laughed. So I didn't know I was a kid,
right,
and stuff. And so, it developed and went on and on. And I was a mess, but I hit it well. Sure. I was a great actress. I could smile, everything's fine. I went to college, everything's fine. But at some point, it turned into I was dancing on tabletops or writing death poetry. So I just knew I was in serious trouble mentally. So I went to a therapist. I was in therapy off and on for 12 years. And it was really interesting because, I healed enough to get married, to have kids, that kind of thing. But I still kept this major secret. I didn't tell anyone because I thought if you knew the real me, you'd run for the hills,
Wow.
And so I just, again, smiled. But there came a point where everything changed. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't act anymore. And I'd be getting my kids off to school, crawling back in bed. I couldn't wash my hair, nothing. I was a mess. I was depressed. And we lived on the train tracks. And all I could think about is Anna Karenina, and I'm going to go kill myself. But before I did that, I ended up writing a list of all the horrible things that happened to me, and I had like 88, and I said, okay, I'm stopping. And then I actually wrote the short list of why I wanted to live. It was basically my husband at the time, my kids, I had a nice house, and then I swore I will do anything in my power to heal.
Wow.
So it was a choice, and I do believe we make choices all along. Whether you're getting divorced, you get a diagnosis, or if somebody's ill, you've had a great loss. We have a choice to either crawl up in a ball and stay there, or be a victim, or we have a choice to move on. And it's not easy, So I made a choice, and I started traveling the world. This was before Oprah and all these people were out there, and there was a group called the Transformational Psychologists, and they had a body and soul conference. And I traveled to California, I traveled to Ireland, I did anything I could to find healers. And what happened was, the biggest thing was, one day I was picking up the crayons, my kids had left, and I just picked up this black crayon, I'm gonna cry, and I just started to scribble. And the rage that poured out of me, and I don't know if it was 10 minutes or a half hour, but the change was profound. It was like, I didn't know about somatic response at that time, that we carry everything in ourselves. And so I just let it go. And then I kept scribbling. And people said to me, did you lose weight? Did you look happier? Did you cut your hair? All that. And I realized I was changing from the inside out.
So you were like releasing a lot of that pain.
Right. And so that's why I say scribbles and doodles. That was the beginning of this, and I journaled. I wasn't the person, who just got a book, a self-help book. If they had questions, I answered them. I had journals up to here. It was like, when I moved 20 years ago, I said I can't take them with me. I had to let them go. But I had been saving them for 10 years, you know? So that's the short version of why I believe in the arts are powerful healing tools. Between the journaling, the scribbles, you don't have to be an artist. And we are all creative, because it can be the way you parent, it could be the way you code, it could be the way you handle a meeting at work, as well as the fine arts, gardening, cooking. My sister is the best at cook. Yeah, I could care less about cooking, but she's very creative.
But I love how you said it's about choice.
Yeah.
And it really is. And our podcast is about life transitions. And it could be at any stage in your life. There's always transitions. And what choices do you make? And how do you move through the next stage?
Right. I mean, when we were talking a little earlier before this started about, we have a choice, when your parents are getting older, do they stay home? Do they go into assisted living? How are we going to live? What are we going to do? I know a couple years ago, I retired, and I was like, and then I said, what did I do? Because I had so much more to give. And so I came back and, and in that couple years, a lot of technology changed.
As we talked about.
Yes, but it's like, okay, this is what I got to do. Yeah. But again, I do believe everything we do, we have a choice. I think the keys are we have to be aware of what's going on and what we're feeling. And so you notice what you notice. And I always talk about like longing and discontent. So are you longing, we were talking about community. Are you longing for more community, more love, more respect, more success, more money? It could be anything. And where's the discontent? Oh my God, I'm too fat. I wish I had this, this isn't working. So we can be both. And then I talk about what would you love? What would you love? And I have people, I work with them on visioning, which I call visioning, and I have them imagine what it would be like 3 years in the future. What are they dreaming of? And it's not just, oh, I got a boyfriend. Oh my God, we went on the best date ever. He held my hand, he whispered in my ear. I help people sensualize those because that's raising your energy. Mm-hmm. And the universe responds. I believe that. The universe responds to energy. And if you're at a higher vibration, that's what you attract.
Yeah. And they say you have to write it down if you have like a business plan or it's a roadmap. It's a roadmap on how you're going to get there.
Right. So, and then there's the pieces, so it's what are you noticing? What would you love? And then creating that roadmap and creating action steps, because a dream is just a dream without action. Mm-hmm. And I know I've done vision boards with people and they say, well, it didn't work. But what did you do? Well, I looked at it every day. I said, that's not enough. That's not enough, folks,
Right. So you have a platform, Creative Activists Turning Pain into Purpose. So explain that a little further to us.
Okay.
What inspired this creation?
Okay, well that was coming back from, retirement. I realized I wasn't done and that I have always dreamed, there's a couple pieces of this. I would love to have a global platform, 1 million people around the world, because gender-based violence, trauma, gun violence, everything is out there and people are hurt and they're wounded and I want them to hear about other tools. And I always had a dream about a healing house where somebody could come and they could do meditation, music, dance, other healing modalities, things like that. So and I want it to be a resource center. So that's why I've started this new platform on Substack, which is Creative Activists at Substack. And I'm including, as we talked earlier, I've interviewed like 200 people. So this is my book, The Creative Activist. I'll just hold it up. And when I did this was 10 years ago. I interviewed over 100 at that point. And it includes 36 stories of individuals who I feel are creative activists. They've used, their creativity in different ways to change the world, because we have that option. And so I'm now reinstating that and doing more interviews. I did a summit in 2021 called Creative Activists and Women Who Dare. And so it's on my YouTube. And now I'm doing this one and starting to interview more people because I want resources available. So if there's a play that talks about something that matters, One of the things I just watched on PBS was the music of Peter, Paul, and Mary for 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I marched to Madison with them on a midnight vigil, and it was a really important part of my life. And yet, I didn't know to the extent their music, how they used it as a platform. They had a song about called Deportee. I'm like, and it's so relevant today with immigration issues.
Yes.
They did another one, Peter Yarrow with his daughter, who's a singer and activist. She, it was called Don't Laugh at Me, and they started a foundation for anti-bullying in schools. So, people are doing different things at different times, and I wanted to share that, so I wrote about that on Substack, and, those kinds of things. So I want to share that and say music's important, and maybe some of their songs are still valid, so...
You could tell how passionate you are.
I am.
It's just like coming out
We
of
don't even
you.
have to ask questions. We could just sit here and let Ray talk.
I tend to take over in an interview.
The reason I'm saying that is you have this passion and you have a lot still in you to let the world know and help.
Seniors, you have an option. You all have a story. I believe this in my heart. Everybody's got something to share, some message, and I want to give them opportunities to share their stories, because even if one person witnesses it, you change your life and you change theirs.
Right.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah.
We were talking earlier just about, COVID, which was 5 years ago already, but, how people learn to stay home, watch Netflix,
Our culture changed.
Our culture completely changed. And I think it really hits, people who are alone, whether you're a senior or just alone.
Right.
And, we were talking about that. How do you kind of get out of your shell? What do you do to create a community or a life for yourself?
Well, and still so much we do is on Zoom. So I'm looking for opportunities around me again. So there was a group I went to, a spiritual gathering it was by the Patty Turner Center near my home. Before COVID, I'd gone there for years, and I met one of my personal coaches because I believe in the power of coaching. And I worked with her for 3 years, and she helped me get this book done because I tend to, as a creative, write 3 things at once. So I'm always got, I just said pick a pony and ride it. Not those words. So
I love that. Pick a pony and ride it.
Yeah, so,
remember that.
And so I talk about synchronicity. I went out on a date with this guy, and I run into one of the women from there. Okay, a couple weeks later, I run into her again when I'm out on another date with a guy. I said, okay, this is the reason I was meant to see her. I believe in synchronicity. And she said, well, we're starting to do it again in Deerfield. So I went. Now, I haven't seen these people in 5 years, 6 years. I walked in, Rae, we're so excited to have you here. And they give me big hugs. I don't think we think we're memorable necessarily. And I'm human. It was like, are they going to remember me? Those kinds of moments.
Right.
And so that's a big part of it. And I just love that. And
Shannon and I we have a client we are working with at the moment, and he lost his wife, and he's living in this big 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath house. And he had knee surgery a couple months back, and he was laid up in his bed.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to us, at that point, he had a community at his health club, and all his friends were sending him cards, bringing him food. And he said, I recognize then that this is no longer a home, it's a house. I want to downsize, but I want to stay within my community because they were so important to him.
Yeah, he's like, I want to age with my tribe, my people who have become my family.
Right, because when we first met him, I said, do you have grandkids? Yeah, where do they live? Naperville. Oh, do you want to move near your grandkids? Oh, no, I can drive there. Remember he told us that.
He did.
I want to be near my community, my friends. We all have things to share in common.
Right. And that's the key. And so I'm reaching out. I'm probably going to take an art class at the community center just because I need to be with people.
Yes.
And why not? I've reached out and I found some communities online. There's a group I'm out with on Monday nights, and we just finished, I don't know if you've ever heard of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Mm-mm.
It's been around for 30 years. I still have my original copy of the book. So.
Oh, wow.
But it's the idea that every day, and this is where I also did, I was journaling, is because she has you write 3 pages every day, and you just free write. and you never know what's going to come out, and then I've also added some other art pieces to it as well, but this is another community, and you just never know. And I feel like, okay, I can connect with these people, I can call them. It's not the same as hanging out, but at least you have a bigger, broader community to reach out to.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, Rae, I want to talk a little bit more about art and healing.
Sure.
Because, for someone listening and they're feeling, maybe stuck or there's some pain and things that they're dealing with, how do they start? Like, what does that, you talk about scribbling and
Okay.
doodling, what does that look like?
Okay, so get a marker, crayon, whatever you want, a pen, get a piece of paper, and I'm going to ask you to pick up your favorite color and put it in your non-dominant hand. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. So how can you judge what you are doing when you're just scribbling with your eyes closed? Because everybody's like, I can't draw, I can't do this, I'm not creative. This is nothing like that. So if you start there, and then you just allow, and and usually people are like this when they start, and then you can turn up the music, you can do it like this, and then this, and this, and then you do that until you feel complete, and then I'll ask you to color it. So, and usually I have to say, now, do you color inside the lines or out? So then I ask them to do what they're not doing, and then the third piece of it is turn it around. It's a scribble, so you can turn the page around and scribble that way. Then what do you notice, afterwards? How are you feeling? What is the feeling tone? What are any images that came up, and those kind of things? And I'll ask you to do a free write. So it'd be, I want you to write down the color that you used, the first color. And so it could be blue, and it could be blue lakes, blue sky, blue this. And you keep doing that, and then, Mad Libs, and then you create a story around that. So I've had such profound people have done this exercise with me, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know how I was feeling until I could do this. It's a great release.
Because you're not thinking what I should write.
Right.
It's everything opposite, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very
That's
interesting.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
I have another exercise that anybody can do. Okay. So this is, how we had those gingerbread men, just the outline. You can find one on, if you feel comfortable, you draw it. Otherwise, go on Google, pick an image, download it. And then I want you to imagine say your name. Okay. So I would just say Rae. Then say it like, when you're really angry, Rae, like when a parent is disciplining you.
Right.
And then a whisper.
Throw the middle name in there.
Yeah. And then Rae as a whisper. And think about how each one felt in your body. Where did you feel it? So when I'm feeling the angry parent, it's like, oh my God, and I want you to scribble in the gingerbread. Where is it? What is it saying? And then you can, again, have a dialogue with your body. What are you telling me? What is it I need to know about myself? What do I need to let go of? You can do that as well as for pain in your body. Where I've done this, like, I carry a lot of tension in my shoulders and my neck, and there are sometimes it's like, and I'll scribble it, and then I'll say, well, what do you need? Rae, you need to step away from work. You've been on the computer too long, whatever. And, you're just listening for that little intuitive hit.
So would that be in today's high stress world? Like, would it be for work or would it be for anything?
For anything, but work especially. Okay. I've done a lot of work with burnout with people, and I've done some workshops over the years on how to avoid burnout. And one of them is this, or get a coloring book. How simple is that?
I remember those were really popular during COVID, right?
Right, and they still, because they have benefits. I mean, there's scientific backing to this, that it calms your stress response, it releases the cortisol, you don't have all that cortisol flowing through your body, and so those are some of the tips.
It's very interesting. My father has Lewy body dementia, and his favorite thing to do is to color.
It's the best thing he could do for himself.
He's 80 years old. He loves to sit and color.
Well, what about puzzles? That was big too.
That I can't answer. I don't know.
All right. I just know a lot of people were doing puzzles.
Yeah, I don't know about the puzzles. That's not my expertise.
Okay.
I did a lot of puzzles with my grandchildren. That was about it.
So another thing that you talk about is storytelling.
Yeah.
And for survivors of trauma, how important that is. Why is that important?
Well, too many people go to their deathbed with the secret. So when I published this book, there was a group called Northwest Casa, which is an agency that supports services for women who experienced domestic violence. So this is where I took my book as an opening kind of thing. And the person who interviewed me on television told me, My mom on her deathbed told me she'd been abused. And then it made sense to who she was, why she never told a single soul. How does that affect you when you keep a secret like that? So thinking about the secrets we keep, and that's part of the reason, in 12-step programs, you need to write a 4-step and share it with somebody. You can witness somebody else's pain and storytelling. And like I said before, I am sure if I sat down with you, we could find a story that you've never told, but it would help so many people. Why are you working with seniors? Because your mother, you've noticed your mother and you're dealing with your own parents, so that's why you do what you do. And I think we need to share those stories.
Right. Well, and we're doing this podcast because we want to help other people.
Right.
We didn't know how to do anything.
Right.
But for so many people, and I know this within friends and family and things, they're afraid to tell that story. They've been told, much like you said, don't tell anyone, we're going to keep this is just within our family,
Right.
You can't tell anyone, whatever the ramification is going to be.
They need a witness. They need somebody who specializes in being there and creating a safe space for them. That's what I do for people. I create that safe space, that they are seen, heard, and understood. They're never judged. They're encouraged to imagine, for me, it's like letting down the armor, but you also have to have a protective armor. We live in that world. We have to protect ourselves, but also, how do we do that? And so part of that is the work I do with, let's imagine, your future life, and what would you love to let go of? And you can draw it, you can do a collage of it, you can do so many different things. And what would you do by sharing your story, and whose life would you impact? Because if we start thinking about whose life could I change, it does make a huge difference.
Right. Yeah. So is there a story you want to share about someone you helped, that you helped them find healing or purpose?
Yes. Okay. This is actually somebody I've known for many years, and I mentioned 4-step. I gave her my 4-step, and she and I became friends. And she lived here for many years. She had dogs always. She loved to go visit the senior center near my house with her dogs. And then she and her partner moved to Arizona, and they were there for 11 years. Now, her background is she's had a lot of illness in her life. She's a type 1 diabetic since she's 9. She had cancer at 18. Then she had a heart attack, and she had to quit work. So who was she going to be without her work? They didn't have children. They had their dogs. And we worked together, and I said, what about becoming a therapy dog? Take one of your big dogs and become therapy dog. And we went through the whole process that I work with people to find what their gifts are. And she went and she took that dog everywhere. She got trained, she got certified, she went to senior centers, she went to veterans homes, she actually went to dental clinics to calm the kids. And I didn't even know that there were programs in libraries, because kids are hesitant to read, but they'll read to the dog. So you just never know what it is. And then she actually just shared it in her senior group where she's living now, that you can use your gifts and change the world. It doesn't matter how old you are, and
I think everybody needs purpose.
Yes.
Reason to get up in the morning.
Right. And if we look at oftentimes you can find it in what's your pain point. What is the story? Where have you been hurt? And what do you want to change? Or I always say, look at the movies that make you cry. What are those stories that are telling you, or the book you're reading? And it's like, oh yeah, that's something I want to work on, to make a difference.
Yeah.
I love that. This has been so much fun.
Oh, thanks.
I'm so glad we got to sit down and talk to you today, because this is very intriguing, and you are such a great example yourself of someone who is still living with a purpose and not stopping because you're retired or because you're single and you live alone or anything like that. You're still getting up. You're still making every moment of your life matter.
Thank you.
You're walking the walk.
I am walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yes.
And I think, and I have a practice. I do meditation in the morning. I have a gratitude practice morning and night. I do these things, and I invest in my brain in the sense of being curious. What do I want to learn? because
Right.
I'm not dead, and there's always something, some activity. I want to go out and learn about this, or like we were just talking about. I looked up Google. How do I put this on YouTube?
Right, right.
It's like all
Which
those
my
kinds
son
of
is
things.
always saying, "Mom, did you check Google?"
Right. And the other part of it is, like I said, I do this thing where I said 3 years in the future. So I'll stand in the mirror in the morning and I'll say, "Oh my God, Rae, I'm so excited. Your life's amazing. I can't believe what you did." So one of them in the future will be, I'm going to be getting an Emmy for the Creative Activist Turning Pain to Purpose docuseries.
There you go.
I love it. And then we'll have you back on our podcast
Oh.
with your Emmy.
I love it. So in the meantime, I bought a statuette,
Right.
that's got stars on it, and I wrote Emmy Award-winning producer.
There you go.
So I try and give
Your
myself.
roadmap.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly. So you're an artist, you're an author, you do all this therapy sessions and things. How can someone work with you or get involved in your programs?
Okay, so you can look at my website. It's raeluskin.com. And on there, I have a lot of my art. I have that kind of thing. But then you go into this other area where I talk about visioning, creative mindfulness, those kind of things that I do with people. And I offer a visioning session for 2 hours with people, so we can get to know each other. We work through sort of, what are you looking for? What is the purpose? And then I am working on a new course that I'm going to be hosting, an 8-week course on becoming a creative activist. So if somebody's interested and we've taken that next level on their visioning, what is their purpose? What's the roadmap? So then we'll go into what's stopping you, because it's fear, and what does fear look like to you, and it's like, I'm afraid, personally a perfectionist. Often people are people pleasers. What will my family say? So somebody I know just wrote a book, and she waited till the perpetrator died, because she wouldn't do anything because people are still alive and they know that person, and all these things. So we are always faced with, again, choices. Yeah. What do we want to do? And so I think this creative act, it'll be based partly on this and some more and new material that I've been working on.
Hold this up one more time.
Thank
The
you.
creative artist.
Creative activist.
Creative activist. And we will link all
Yes,
of your
thank
you.
contact information on our show notes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And on Substack, if you subscribe, I'm offering a free Scribbles and Doodles class on August 8th.
Oh,
So
there you go.
So you can join me there and get a little taste of what I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
for
on
having
today.
me. This was so
We're going to have
fun.
to have you back another time and hear what is happening in your world.
I would love
years.
that.
Yeah.
That would be phenomenal. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Before 3 years. We're not going to wait 3
Yeah,
years.
no, not 3 years. I expect a lot more in the next year. So
Okay.
And thank you for joining us today on Help Nobody Told Me. And make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.